You're listening to Back Pew Convos.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Sal. And this is the podcast God wants you to listen to.
So if you want to remain in God's will, have a sit down.
Grab a beverage of your choice.
And have a listen.
You're welcome.
Smelling salters.
Yeah.
Salters that you smell with your smeller, your salters.
Show enough. Or you could just eat some horseradish. Does the same thing. Or wasabi.
Wasabi? Yeah. You know what? I don't love wasabi. It's okay. I don't love it.
I like to take the wasabi and mix it in my soy sauce. Kind of ground it in, So I take the wasabi, put it in a little dish. Then I fill up the dish with soy sauce and kind of ground the wasabi in it, make like a spicy soy sauce.
Spicy.
That's how I eat my sushi.
See, if I was going to use the wasabi, that's what I would do. I would cut it with some soy.
Yeah. That's kind of the only way I'd eat it. But I sort of do have you ever had like those little snacks? They're like wasabi peas or whatever. They're like coated in the wasabi stuff. I like those.
No.
Well, plant protein, bro. You need to get those gains.
Not from plants.
Plant power.
Oh, you know what that reminds me of?
What?
I actually meant to ask you this before we started recording, but here it is. First of all, remove your mind from the gutter and let me know when you've sufficiently done that.
I can't make any promises. Everybody listening to this knows me. So,
anyway,
I'll try my best.
Well, I probably shouldn't even said that because it's now you. Anyway,
no, yeah.
It's someone left a comment on one of our videos and used a term I've never heard before.
Mm-hmm.
They said our thumbnail was Soyjack. Do you know what that is?
Not a clue.
Soyjack?
Not a clue.
I tried to look it up. I think he was insinuating that the thumbnail or me or you. I don't remember. I don't know exactly. Probably not sure which one he was referring to.
Probably you.
Maybe because he did say something about my mouth. I think he's like a gaping look, which my face in the thumbnail is sort of like that. So maybe he was talking about me, but was insinuating that it was effeminate looking, I think is what that means.
Malakoi.
Malakoi. Yes.
From now on, if you're gonna leave comments like that, it's Malakoi, okay? Don't use slang that we don't know.
Thank you. Arsenicoitai.
And you know what? I'm not gonna speak for you here, but I'm not a homophobe. I don't care. Say what you want. It's not offensive to me.
No, I wasn't offended. I was just kind of confused because I didn't understand the term. It's not. I guess it's not really much of a burn if you have to look it up to even see what it means.
True.
So,
fair warning to anybody who wants to send us insults. We are both approaching 40 years old, so
yes,
keep that in mind with the slang that you use.
I'm turning 39 tomorrow, actually.
Sure enough. On Lunasa.
Lunasa?
You're welcome for bringing that into this podcast.
What is that?
It is a pagan celebration of the harvest. It's the beginning of harvest season.
Oh.
A Shabbat.
Shabbat.
Yeah. So.
Interesting.
Yes.
Pagan, you say?
Sure enough. Well, I mean, it's got Lunasa, I guess, comes from like Celtic background, but it's observed now in sort of like neo-paganism with like Wicca, and I mean all of that stuff is really hard to pin down like what they believe because it's all very individualized and there's a lot of subsets and whatever, but yeah, it's one of the spokes of the wheel of the year. So
interesting.
There you go. Now you know something. Your birthday is officially the beginning of harvest season and the wheel of the year.
About to be gleaning. I guess.
I guess it could be worse. My birthday's nothing. Close to Yule, I guess.
It is fairly close to the Yule. Yeah. Well, uh,
How about that? We even mentioned paganism on this podcast before we even got to the Bible or Christianity. How you feel about that?
was it whatever? It is what it is. Perhaps I need to evangelize you like the Apostle Paul in Acts 17.
It's actually one of my favorite chapters. So
I thought about that this morning because uh, speaking of things that are hard to define and pin down, I was listening to some older videos of Randall Rouser.
yeah,
I don't know why. I just randomly was like, you know what? I want to listen to Randall Rouser talk about Alyssa Childers and progressive Christianity.
one of my favorite names in all of the space. You know,
Which again, I actually this it kind of does tie in to other stuff I'd been thinking about because I'm not a progressive Christian.
right?
I probably would have said I was at one point.
You were maybe trending that way. I don't think that you ever really were, but you're trending that maybe that direction. But no, you're not.
Yeah.
I mean, you are. Let me just say, I don't want to label you. You're allowed to label. Allowed to identify however you would like. But from my perspective, no, I would agree. You're not a progressive Christian.
Yeah. But some of the people that Alyssa Childers has labeled as progressives are just like I don't know how you get more Christian actually. Like
Right.
Brian Zahnd was one of the ones that she's talked about that I was like, what? Brian, like literally every single Sunday, whenever Brian preaches, they say the apostle or the Apostles' Creed.
Yeah.
They like do like repentance through like the Book of Common Prayer, like they're taking the Eucharist. Like you can tell when you listen to him, like he's steeped in the scriptures. Like he's like I don't know how you get more Christian actually than Brian Zahnd, but he rejects penal substitution and like the 1978 Chicago whatever statement on inerrancy.
Yeah.
So like so he's not a Christian because of that?
Because he uses his brain. That's a that's the delineation now between what makes a Christian and not. You're not allowed to use your brain. You just have to ignore all of this data and this fact. And
Yeah. Which it is a little frustrating. I haven't actually read her book, but according to Randall, she actually kind of like her whole point in the book that she wrote called Another Gospel is that she actually goes so far as to say that progressive Christianity is an entirely different religion, which is different than saying someone's a Christian heretic.
yes,
That's quite different.
I actually swallow that one a little better because that's something I've said on here. Actually, is that sometimes it feels like a whole nother religion, and I don't even know that I would consider myself a progressive Christian, but I'm certainly more progressive than she is.
Right. But it's just really frustrating though, because like it to me it reveals just a real lack of understanding of the real depth of the history of the church.
Yeah,
Like
I agree.
like the first millennia of the church was the predominant view of atonement was Christus Victor. It wasn't penal substitution. Like you have little hints of it in Augustine and maybe one or two others, but like the prevailing view of atonement was like ransom theory, Christus Victor theory.
Don't you know that historic Christianity only goes back to John Calvin?
That's what it sounds like.
I mean, everybody knows that.
But it did. I think one of the reasons that, other than that, it was just kind of like a fun thing to listen to. Like it, you know, sometimes it's kind of just fun to hear people like response videos. All that kind of stuff is like watching people do responses. So that's kind of more like a guilty pleasure type deal
Yeah.
for me, I guess. Like
Okay.
I do enjoy it, but I do also feel a little bit guilty about it because it's kind of like, I don't know. On the one hand, it's like, yeah, I mean, I think that she's full of crap too, and I guess she should be confronted about it, maybe. But on the other hand, I'm kind of like, I don't know. I don't know if you have any tension with that or not. What do you think about response videos?
I I don't
That do that
really
sort of thing.
have much of an opinion, to be honest, because I don't watch a whole lot of them personally. The ones that I do watch are actually probably more from the opposite angle. Like I tend to watch. I sort of tend to watch responses where people are responding to against things that I would be more apt to agree with, just because I'm especially when it comes to church stuff and like Christianity, I'm hyper aware of the echo chamber that we can get into, and so I it's hard to find voices that are going to be honest. I feel like honest, like critically of the things that
Right.
you believe. So I'll listen to a lot of. Well, I don't want to say a lot. I don't listen to them a lot, but if I'm going to listen to a response, I'll usually listen to someone like what's his name now? Alex O'Connor, who will respond to something, or Bart Ehrman will respond to something, or like something that's being a little more critical of the faith, just because I want their perspective. I don't want to ignore their perspective. I want to take it into consideration. So, yeah, I don't know. I usually don't listen to people to those kind of response videos, but that's just me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I listen to and will like watch all kinds of different response things. Like I like to listen to Alex too.
Yeah.
Actually listen to one of his recently.
I like to listen to his whole episodes more so than his like responses that he does, but
Yeah.
I will listen to he'll cut out like short little clips where he's responding to stuff or you know.
I actually left a comment recently on a YouTube clip. I had watched the whole episode a while back, but it was him and Andrew's gonna cuss me for not remembering the names. I think we've talked about this before. I can never.
Connectly
Yes, Cliff.
Cliff, yeah.
Is
I still don't remember his son's name,
it
but
Stewart?
Stuart
Stewart? I think maybe it is Stewart. Cliff and Stewart.
Connectly,
Yes.
something like that.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced or not. But yeah, it was them with Alex, and he was making the great point of like, why does God's mercy run out after death?
Yeah.
To them. Like, and it I remember being bothered when I first listened to it, and it bothered me again when I saw this clip the other day. So I was like, you know what? I just actually decided to leave a little comment. And so I said it would behoove folks like Cliff and Stewart and all of these like apologists that do this kind of thing. I think it would behoove them to at least think about considering extending some the possibility of universal salvation. Like, you don't have to affirm it that it is the truth, but you could. I mean, could we not at least say in that situation with them talking to Alex, could they not have been like, well, this isn't what we believe, and actually we believe that this is. You could even say you believe that it's not in line with the tradition, or you don't think that it has good scriptural warrant. You could say all of that. You could preface it with whatever you wanted to, but then just say there is this third option that's always been a minority in the church, but it is a potential option to look into, and it is universal salvation. And it would solve that. It wouldn't solve, not solve's not right,
Right.
but it would be something to respond to that critique.
Yeah. I watched that same clip and that is one example where it's like, man, you made yourself look bad there. Like
Yeah, you just got nothing.
you can point to Alex and say he made them look. No, they didn't. No, he didn't. That's your own fault, buddy. Like,
Right.
because that's a basic, very basic. Like, you should be asking yourself that question when you're like a teenager in youth group.
Right.
I mean, that's that basic. So
Yeah.
I had a similar one today where I was watching. I was getting so frustrated with it, and I don't even know like I don't know why I was getting frustrated with it because this is something I actually more agree with Bart Ehrman on anyway, but it was a debate that Bart Ehrman was having with some apologist guy, and I don't even remember. Have no idea what his name is. He's got a big, long beard, was wearing a cowboy hat. But
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. I can't think of his name, but
they were talking about the Gospels basically, and Bart was pointing out like just the inconsistencies. Like in the two examples, this wasn't Bart's video. This was somebody else who was like using clips from it and making points with it. But the two examples that they used from Bart Ehrman was the birth narratives and the resurrection narratives, which are different. Like in the birth narratives only occur in Matthew and Luke, and they're different. And Bart Ehrman went through each one. He went through both stories and pointed out this is different and this is different, and they're not. They cannot both be the same. Like this is an impossibility. There's no explanation that can skirt around this. It's just there's no way to resolve this. And then, but like instead of addressing that, the guy spent like 15 straight minutes going through and being like a whole list of things of like Bart Ehrman agrees with the Gospels that Jesus was a real person. Bart Ehrman agrees with the Gospels that, tried to point out that, like, well, Bart believes all these things in the Gospels, but he doesn't believe these few things that are, like, he considers to be cornerstones to his faith. You know what I mean? So that makes Bart untrustworthy. And it's like, you didn't even address what he literally pointed out that there are things in those stories that you're trying to tell us that are history that cannot be, they cannot be like they don't go together. That can't be both, like sort of did he live in Nazareth to begin with or Bethlehem? Like he didn't live in both. Did he travel to Bethlehem? Like it couldn't be both. After the birth, did they return to their home or did they go to Egypt? It couldn't have been both. Like there has to have been the stories just do not align if you're reading them honestly, in my opinion. But no, just completely ignore that. Just don't even answer it. Like it comes across as like, I mean, I rarely say slam dunks in a debate setting, but from the clip that I watched, that guy just looked like a fool to me. Like,
yeah, I don't know. I haven't watched that one.
and
enough to know.
it's just frustrating to me that like instead of acknowledging the difficulties, which I guess is something that that'll get us on topic a little bit, because that's
Yeah.
sort of some of related to the topic that we're going to talk about today. It really is sort of the basis for both of our deconstructions, I think. It's the basis for this entire podcast. It's something we're going to talk about today, but it's just the tendency for us to try to ignore those difficulties instead of acknowledging a metanoia, right? Maybe I do need to change my mind. Maybe I need to look at this and say, maybe what I have been taught my whole life is wrong. Maybe what I have believed my whole life is wrong. Maybe, just maybe, I need to look for another paradigm to see this, because instead of doing that, in the example you gave and the example I feel like from what I got out of that clip, that's the one thing that was lacking, which I mean, a debate's not a good time to do that anyway, but but regardless, like I feel like there's a history of that, of just not acknowledging, like when things get hard, you just double down on it instead of being like, well, that's actually a good point. I mean, that seems to be the point you were making with the whole Alex O'Connor thing. It's like, man, there's nothing wrong with like listening to a good argument and being like, that's a good point. Maybe I need to consider that. Maybe I need to think about that instead of just ignoring the tension there,
Right. Well, like I laid that comment out, and then someone commented on my comment and was basically just saying like Christian universalism is heretical, it has no biblical basis or whatever. And I just liked the comment and didn't.
Yeah,
and
there's no
left
point.
it alone.
But
I didn't leave the comment to get into a debate about Christian universalism. I've done that in the past, and I can do it.
right.
Like I know the arguments. I could argue with you about it all day long. I don't care to. But I 100% stand by what I said. Like,
Yeah.
I think that I just really do think that like annihilationism and universalism, Christian universalism are gaining more and more and more and more
Right.
popularity in the church. And I just think that, like, if anyone, if all these apologists are going to continue to actually do anything, I don't know how much they're doing that's actually
Right.
productive is a discussion that you could have, I guess. But but if they're going to have any sort of, if they're going to be productive at all going forward, they're going to have to start addressing those things. They're going to have to start at least proposing those as potential. I don't, again, I just wish that people would get to the point where they would say, I don't agree with this, but this is a potential way of viewing it. Even that, I would have been thrilled to hear Cliff and them just say that,
Right.
you know.
I agree.
But it's a little far afield from where
It's difficult though. I mean, in certain brands of Christianity, everything is built upon believing in the right thing. So even just acknowledging that there are other ways to see things, it's too big of a leap to make.
Yeah.
I would argue. But what the freak do I know?
Yeah, it's that topic in particular is frustrating because, like, once you see it, you just can't unsee it. Like the biblical support for hell as eternal, conscious, and torment. Those three things together. Not just conscious or not just torment, but eternal, conscious torment. The biblical support for that is basically nothing.
Right.
Nothing. There's like maybe if I was being like the most generous I could possibly ever be, maybe 5 scriptures. Maybe. It's probably less than that if I'm being real.
My favorite part to the whole thing is that, like, kind of their strongest argument comes in, like, Matthew 25,
Right.
which the whole standard for that is how you treat the least of these. It has
Yeah.
nothing to do with believing the right
Yeah.
things. It's all about how you treat other people.
Has absolutely nothing to do with affirming creeds or
Right.
penal substitution or like going back to the illicit child stuff. Like Jesus doesn't say anything about the Chicago Statement of Inerrancy. He doesn't say anything about
Right.
penal substitution. It's all about how you treat the least of these. That's what makes the sheep and the goats.
It's kind of funny to me because I can see everything that I'm viewing right now when I am thinking about things is just the topic, the word paradigm is just on my mind all the time because it's so much easier for me to see now how everything that we get out of the text, everything that we get out of what other people are saying, from everything that we're getting off of watching YouTube videos or podcasts or anything, that books that we're reading, it's all from the like it's so, all you do is shift your paradigm and it says something completely different, but it's so hard. Like you can't see it any other way until you shift that paradigm. You know what I mean?
Right.
And yeah, I just like that keeps coming up for me because I feel like is related to a lot of this too. Like if you just shift the way that you think about something, it's to your point. Like once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
To your point, I think a lot of that, like for somebody like me who thinks the way that I think, like it's not that we've talked about this at length, but it's not that I don't care about what the Bible says. But I'm not the kind of person who's just like, well, the Bible says it, so I believe it, even though it contradicts everything that makes common sense to me. It contradicts everything that lines up with all the evidence that I see. It lines up with you know what I mean? Like you can trace the genealogies of the Bible back and get to, well, I guess the Earth's only 6,000 some odd years old, but like, no, it's not. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not just going to believe something just because, like, so I don't think that's the way the Bible was meant to be read. That's not the way it was written. This may come as a shocker to some people, but the Bible wasn't written with chapters and verses.
Yeah.
So, like, when you're pulling out a verse, old McDonald style, verse here, verse there, verse everywhere, that's not the way it was written, man. It was written in like Paul's letters are letters. They're supposed to be read like letters. I mean,
yeah,
so. And that's what we get into with some of this hell, eternal conscious torment stuff. It's like, well, pluck a Bible verse here, Bible verse there, Bible. Like, no, for me, what resonates with me is sort of like just the logic of it, the common sense, like, which is what Alex was appealing to in that clip. Why do we just assume that God's mercy ends at death?
Right.
Let that be the paradigm that you read those scriptures through now. You know what I mean? Like, let that be your shift. What like what that's kind of like, to me, that's what we get into when we talk about reading a Christocentric way, right? It's like, let that, it's not just, we use the term lens, but like maybe it would be more applicable to let Christ be your paradigm for reading things. Like, let that shift your paradigm. How does that change the way you view your view on hell?
Right.
You know, like,
Yeah.
because we can do the old McDonald stuff here, there, Bible verse, pull a verse here and there, all you want, man, but that, it doesn't get us anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if I don't know, this is something I've been thinking about a little bit. For one, because it's kind of tied into some of my thoughts on what we are going to get into with the topic, the main topic for today, but also because I listened to Jordan Daniel Wood talking about universalism, Christian universalism a little bit. I keep feeling like I need to make sure and say Christian every time I say it
Yeah,
because I don't want folks to misunderstand what I mean by it.
right.
But yeah, I mean, if you were gonna do that though, even if you were gonna be like, all right, let's just pile up proof texts and take them at their most plain reading and let's see which one wins. I got bad news for you guys. It's not eternal conscious torment.
No.
Or actually really good news for you.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people won't receive that as good news. But but honestly though, if you did that, if I'm being honest with myself, Annihilation probably has the most. Like if we were just going to pile up proof texts that on the plain reading seem to support one of the three major views,
Right.
it would support annihilationism. Now, I think that universalism makes the most sense of the rest of the passages. Like I don't think that annihilationism can do the work with the universalist passages that the universalist passages can do with the annihilation ones.
Right.
So I think that overall, the Christian universalism, I think, is overall the when you look at the whole narrative and you try to understand, like if you try to like if you're just assuming eternal conscious torment and you try to understand the annihilation passages and the universalist passages in light of eternal conscious torment, I think you have a very hard go. I think you have a very hard go if you go the other route with annihilation as your basis and you're trying to understand universalism and eternal conscious torment in light of annihilation.
Right.
But I think that the easiest way you make sense of all of those passages is through a universalist lens. I mean, maybe I'm biased because that's what I am, but I really do think that.
Yeah.
And I will say this, if we were going to pile up proof text, the universalist passages far and away outweigh any eternal conscious torment passages.
I agree.
But yeah, again, I don't think that's how we're supposed to do this.
Right.
But it's just something I had actually thought about this morning.
You know, we used to talk about that every episode. We haven't talked about universalism in a while.
No?
Well, let me Christian universalism. Let me.
Thank you. Thank you.
But you're right. I mean, that's one of those trigger terms. People hear what they want to hear with that. You'll hear,
Yeah.
if you just say universalism, people will think you mean like, oh, but there's nothing that matters, and just believe whatever you want and practice whatever you want, live whatever you want. Like, like.
I actually was talking to somebody the other day. I ran into a guy I used to work with at Walmart. And whenever we worked together, he was actually it's PJ Starks. You might know who he
I
is.
do, yeah.
Uh,
I mean, I don't know him personally, but I know who you're talking about.
yeah. Well, whenever we worked together, he was like an agnostic, and I was Christian, but this was pre-deconstruction, Sean.
Right.
And so, and then he left, and now he's a Christian, and then I went through this deconstruction. So it's almost like we switched places. But then, like now that like I would consider myself a Christian again, we ran into each other the other day, and I kind of he I mean he kind of brought up the problem of evil, and so I just kind of was like, well, this is kind of how I understand. It doesn't solve the problem, but it gives me a little bit. I can live with it because of my universalist, you know. And he was immediately like, "Oh, Unitarian." And I was like, "No, no, not Unitarian Universalist." I
Which I'm
guess.
not hating on the Unitarian Universalists. I've never been to a Universalist Unitarian church, but from some of the videos I've watched, I could probably jive with it. Personally,
Right.
I don't think you could, but I could.
Right. Which I mean, I'm not hating on them.
Right.
That's just not what I am.
It's not what you mean, at least in this
Yeah.
context.
But because Unitarian Universalism is, I guess, the more well-known version of Universalism, I always have to be quick to say, if you're thinking that, you're not quite getting at what I'm saying.
Yeah. It's a
So-
different thing. Plus, I just don't know enough about it. Sort of like what I said, in that, I think it was the last episode where you asked me about like the Jesus being the definitive revelation of God compared to some of these other religious figures. And like, I just, quite frankly, I don't know enough about those other religious, admittedly, I don't know enough about it. I don't know enough about these other religions.
Right.
I've been a Christian my whole life,
Yeah.
It's the same. Like, I don't know enough about Unitarian Universalism to even speak to it. So,
Yeah. I know a little bit. I don't know a ton. I was kind of forced into. I was kind of forced into educating myself on it a little bit because of
right.
accusations being thrown around.
Slender!
Mm-hmm. What does the Bible refer to the devil as?
The father of lies. He was a murderer from the beginning.
Not adversary. What's the other one?
Douchebag?
We were looking for accuser.
Oh, accuser. Yeah.
Accuser, sir.
The devil. I got kicked out of church for yelling F the devil. I thought we hated that mug.
Yeah, that's still funny to this day.
It'll never not be funny.
Yeah.
It's my favorite. What do you think about that little statue on the church I sent you this morning? That's hilarious. So funny.
Silly.
There was a little carving in this old ancient church in England, and apparently whoever was like doing the artwork on it carved a little naked man that was like showing his butthole out, and like, but it was up in the corner to where nobody could see it until they decided to add a second level to it or whatever, and now it's in plain view. It's so funny.
Yeah.
I believe that's the first time butthole has been said on this podcast.
Maybe. Probably.
That's funny.
Yeah.
We're now E for explicit. What did you get your E for?
Well, I'm trying to think of a way to transition from butthole to Numbers 31.
Well, you know what? The way some people translate Numbers 31 sort of makes God out to be kind of a butthole.
True. There you go. That was a pretty smooth segue. Yeah. Don't translate. Don't interpret rather Numbers 31 in a way that makes God a butthole.
Solid advice. But easier said than done.
Yeah.
And that's hence why we're going to talk about it.
Yeah. You know what? I actually found it to be, well, I don't know. I don't want to, because you said easier said than done. But you know what? I didn't struggle too much with finding a good interpretation for
I
it.
really didn't struggle too much with finding a good interpretation for it. I think that anything that we do like this, my constant, it's always in the back of my mind is we're just churching it up. We're just trying to make it sound. We're explaining away all these very difficult passages to just make it more palatable. Like it's the way it's written and comes across is too unpalatable. So we're just turning ourselves in. It's more of those pretzel knots that I've talked about before. Turning ourselves in pretzel knots so that we don't have to throw it away. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying that's what I do with it or that's how I believe, but what I am saying is that anytime we talk about stuff like this, that thought is sort of always lurking in the back of my mind.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we just have kind of different views on that because I actually think I really kind of think that's how we're intended to read it.
Maybe it is.
I actually think that some of my takeaways from it, to me, it would be hard to imagine that these things weren't intentional, the connections that are made in it. But
Well, we'll get into it.
I did want to. That's why I wasn't trying to ignore you as you were speaking, but I was trying to um, find a quote from Origin that I wanted to read. Origin of Alexandria. Um, can you fill space whilst I do that?
I'm pretty good at filling space, actually. I'm a large man. Uncomfortably large, matter of fact. My mass. Yeah, so anyway.
You're doing a bang up job filling that.
Well, you really put me on the spot there, fella. um,
I actually found it.
dang, all right.
So you can, I mean, if you have something you want to say, you can.
I like it when you call me Big Pop. Your hands in the air if you a true player.
Okay, so this was the quote I was looking for, and it's from Origin's homilies on Joshua 15.
Every time I hear the word homily, I think about hominy, the food,
Hominy.
which is a random food.
It's like corn. It's corn, basically, right?
Sort of, I guess. I
Ish.
don't know. It's like a Frankenstein.
Frankenbeans. This is the quote from Origin. If the wars of the Israelites against their enemies were not to be understood figuratively, the apostles would not have passed them on to us to read. For what concern is it to me whether this or that king waged war and conquered, unless by understanding these things spiritually I might fight and overcome my own vices? And I thought that was really good, and that is really the route that I take with a lot of that. The wars, instead the battles of the Israelites.
The wars and rumors of wars. Yeah, ChatGPT gave me that quote too.
Oh, really?
It did.
Well, there you go.
How
Yeah.
about them apples?
How about that?
Yeah. So, all right. Are we ready to get into this? Or what are we gonna read this thing? How are we gonna do this?
Yeah, I figured that we would. Do you want to read it, or do you want me to read it?
Well, I need you to fill space while I pull it up.
I mean, I reckon that. Are you going to do NRSV?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Cool beans.
Numeros 31. All right, here we go.
I would read. Do you think we should?
Nope.
Okay.
I think we should read 31.
Okay. I was gonna say 25.
I know what you were going to say. That was 6 chapters ago.
Yes, but I do think that it's
Okay, well then you read that part. I'm reading 31. You read 25.
okay. Okay. So, let me just see what is worth reading and what is not here. So I'll just kind of summarize instead of reading the whole thing.
All right.
So basically, Israel is staying at Shittim. That's the name of the place. And
Sure enough.
the people began to have sexual relations with the women of Moab. And they started worshiping the Moabite gods, Baal of Peor. And it says that the Lord's anger was kindled against Israel.
Kind of lets you in. Right there, there's a good lesson in that, right?
Yeah.
The power the woman holds over the man.
Yeah. Yeah.
It can get you to do anything.
Yeah. And so it says, thus Israel yoked itself to the Baal of Peor, and the Lord's anger was kindled against Israel. The Lord said to Moses, take all the chiefs of the people and impale them in the sun before the Lord, in order that the fierce anger of the Lord may turn away from Israel. Kind of odd that the Lord spoke of himself in third person there, isn't it? The Lord said to Moses, take all the chiefs and impale them before the Lord.
To be fair, yes, but we're talking about the Bible here. There's a lot of strange stuff in there.
Yeah. So yeah. And Moses said to the judges of Israel, each of you shall kill any of your people who have yoked themselves to the Baal of Peor. And then one of the Israelites comes and brings a Midianite woman um, into their tent, and they're apparently doing tent stuff.
They're doing what you do in a tent.
The Bible's R-rated, folks, in case you didn't know. And Phineas, son of Eleazar, throws a spear through both of them.
The only thing I kept thinking about was Tommy Boy. They were getting it on.
No, they didn't.
Or no, it's not Tommy Boy. It's
Billy Madison.
Billy Madison. Yeah.
So anyway, this is just a little bit of background, like the reason that the Lord initially was angry with them was because the Moabite women were seducing the Israelite men and leading them astray to worship false gods. And
Sure enough, sex magic.
and there's the whole thing with Balaam and Balaam not being able to curse Israel, but like colluding with the Moabite women. Like, anyway,
Right on.
just wanted to give a little bit of background before we went to Numbers 31. No, we can go to Numbers 31.
Well,
I guess we didn't have to say any of that.
I mean, to me, that was maybe even worse reading than Numbers 31.
So there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff.
The whole, like, it's, I guess it's just an overarching thing of the way that you approach these scriptures. Because to me, like, I don't want to say it's worse because the sheer numbers in Numbers 31 is a lot. You're talking about an entire population, but like the Lord telling Moses to impale the chiefs of all the people so they bake in the sun. That's a tough one.
Right. Yeah, and but again, I do think that and you literally just said that a lot of times this feels like explaining stuff away.
Yeah.
But I do tend to read a lot of that stuff allegorically and spiritually. So
Right.
like there's a reason it's the chiefs in particular.
Right.
Right? It's the ones who are leading the charge, so to speak. Like if you think about that in terms of like your own spiritual warfare, your own vices and things within yourself, the wood hand stubble that needs to be burned away, like,
Yeah, for sure. I mean that's a theme that I think that we'll talk about throughout
Yeah,
this because that's spoiler alert. That's basically how I read the entire chapter here.
yeah,
But I think you have to. I don't know how you can.
right, yeah,
Otherwise, you have to say either God did say that or he didn't, and if he didn't, then he's you just saying that you don't believe what it says, or if he did, you got a moral problem on your hands. So,
right,
anyway, 31. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, avenge the Israelites on the Midianites. Afterward, you shall be gathered to your people. So Moses said to the people, arm some of your number for war, so that they may go against Midian, to execute the Lord's vengeance on Midian. You shall send 1,000 from each of the tribes of Israel to the war. And then my stupid thing shut down. Here we go. You send 1,000 of each... 1,000 from each of the tribes of Israel to the war. So out of the thousands of Israel, 1,000 from each tribe were conscripted, 12,000 armed for battle, which is a lot for a little tribal community. Anyway, Moses sent them to war, 1,000 from each tribe, along with Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the priest, with the vessels of the sanctuary and the trumpets for sounding the alarm in his hand. They did battle against Midian, as the Lord had commanded Moses, and killed every male. They killed the kings of Midian, Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, and Reba. Oh, no, not Reba. The 5 kings of Midian, in addition to others who were slain by them, and they also killed Balaam, son of Beor, with the sword. The Israelites took the women of Midian and their little ones captive, and they took all their cattle, their flocks, and all their goods as booty. All their towns where they had settled and all their encampments they burned, but they took all the spoil and all the booty, both people and animals. Then they brought the captives and the booty and the spoil to Moses, to Eleazar the priest, and to the congregation of the Israelites at the camp on the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho. So do you want to stop there or do you want to keep going?
I guess we can stop there for a second.
That's where mine kind of puts a stop point.
Yeah.
Puts a break in it, but
yeah. So the first thing that I wanted to note here, the reason that I thought about talking about this is because these stories are hard to.
if you take it literally, that's kind of hard to jive with some of the stuff that you read in, let's just say, for example, First John, God is love.
Right.
Or with some of the stuff that Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, you should love your enemies and be perfect as your Father is perfect, which seems to indicate that God loves his enemies, not
Yeah.
murders them.
Right. Do good to those who curse you. You know, Balaam was literally attempting to curse them.
Right.
You know.
And they killed him, they slain him with the sword.
Right. But like this is also just one that you don't hear people talk about a lot. Like a lot of people, like in debates or um, apologetics, there's a lot of talk about the Canaanite conquest and Noah's the flood, and like there's lots of those types of like big stories that get talked about. But man, this is a little bit of a smaller story that, man, no one really deals with this a whole lot.
Yeah, man, you're 31 chapters deep in Numbers, which is arguably the most boring book in the whole collection. So,
Right. But like it's hard to even find commentary on it.
yeah.
Because not a lot of people will really mess with it too much. So I thought that it would be good to, not that anyone cares what we think about it, I guess, but to provide something on it,
Right.
you know?
We're going to fill that void.
Yeah.
We're going to fill it real good.
But this was probably a good place to stop because I wanted to point out that they're camped on the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho. By the Jordan. So do you want me to read it or do you want to?
Oh, what? Keep reading?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can. Moses, Eleazar the priest, and all the leaders of the congregation went to meet them outside the camp. Moses became angry with the officers of the army, the commanders of thousands and the commanders of hundreds who had came from service in the war. Moses said to them, "Have you allowed all the women to live? These women here, on Balaam's advice, made the Israelites act treacherously against the Lord in the affair of Peor, so that the plague came among the congregation of the Lord. Now, therefore, kill every male among the little ones, and kill every woman who has known a man by sleeping with him. But all the young girls who have not known a man by sleeping with him, keep alive for yourselves. Camp outside the camp 7 days. Whoever of you has killed any person or touched a corpse, purify yourselves and your captives on the 3rd and on the 7th day. You shall purify each garment, every article of skin, everything made of goat's hair, and every article of wood." Eleazar the priest said to the troops who had gone to battle, "This is the statute of the law that the Lord has commanded Moses. Gold, silver, bronze, iron, tin, and lead, everything that can withstand fire shall be passed through the fire, and it shall be clean. Nevertheless, it shall also be purified with water for purification, and whatever cannot withstand fire shall be passed through the water. You must wash your clothes on the 7th day, and you shall be clean. Afterward, you may come into the camp."
Yeah. I mean, that section is the bulk of where my notes come from. I don't know about
Yep.
you, but
In true fashion to myself, I didn't make notes other than the ones that are in my mind. But
oh, yeah. So,
but yeah, that's just seems to be the meat of the stuff.
right.
These are where most of my thoughts are
Yeah.
at.
Yeah, so Moses, Eleazar the priest, and all the leaders of the congregation went to meet them outside the camp. And Moses was angry because they brought folks back. Um, let's just address the literal. Let's just like to your point of what you were saying earlier, let's just not immediately move to explain this away.
Yeah, please.
Let's just be honest about what the text is saying here on a literal level. Moses was mad that the commanders and the folks that they had allowed all the women to live
And apparently children.
and children. So he had them kill all of the male among the little ones. That means the babies.
That would be children. This is, I shouldn't say everything that comes to my mind. There was a filter right there that,
No, but like honestly though, I don't know exactly what you were going to say, but if I could get into your mind a little bit here, you would have folks that would have no problem apologizing this away, but then would be hardcore supporters of pro-life.
that's exactly what I was going to, that's exactly what I was going to say.
And it's like, are you pro-life or not, man?
Right. That's the whole argument, right? Pro-life. God is pro-life, right?
Be consistent.
I mean, if you're reading this literally, no, he's not.
Yeah.
Not at all.
You have to be consistent. Now, therefore, kill every male among the little ones, and kill every woman who has known a man by sleeping with him. So anyone who's not a virgin, kill him. Do you know the average age of like what the age whenever girls would start getting married at this point and having children?
I would assume it's quite a bit younger than now. My mind is probably around the age of 13, 14.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could,
but I have no idea.
I guess I could look it up, but that's kind of what I'm assuming too. Either way, we're talking about, it specifically says young.
My assumption is that once they became of age to have a child, they were no longer considered a little one. But I don't know that. That's based on nothing but my own assumptions.
Right. But so it says kill every woman who has known a man by sleeping with him, but all the young girls who have not known a man by sleeping with him, keep alive for yourselves. Young girls, keep all the young girls for yourself.
Which
Virgins.
doesn't say this, but to me the implication is sex slave.
Perhaps. Yeah.
It doesn't say it. I admit it doesn't say it, but
and I don't know enough about the history and the culture, but I'm gonna assume yes that you're probably right there. Camp outside the camp 7 days. Whoever of you has killed any person or touched a corpse, purify yourselves and your captives on the third day. Purify yourselves and your captives. Well, the only captives left here are the young girls, right?
Yep.
Everyone else is gonzo. Killed them all. You shall purify every garment, every article of skin, everything made of goat's hair, and every article of wood. This is the statute of the law that the Lord has commanded Moses: gold, silver, bronze, iron, tin, and lead. Everything that can withstand fire shall be passed through fire, and it shall be clean. Nevertheless, it shall also be purified with the water for purification, and whatever cannot withstand fire shall be passed through the water. You must wash your clothes on the seventh day, and you shall be clean. Afterward, you may come into the camp. So I don't know exactly where their water supply was coming from, but I would assume the Jordan.
Makes sense.
Because they're camped by the Jordan. And so the first thing that I thought of when reading this through that Christocentric lens, was, first of all, if we're actually going to read through a Christocentric lens, we have to read with who Christ is. And who is Christ? Christ is the one that suffers with those who suffer. He's the one who suffers outside the camp. He's outside the gates of Jerusalem. He was crucified outside the city. And he suffers with those who suffer. He lowers himself. He is moved with compassion by the crowds. He is suffering with these young girls. I'm trying to put my mind in the mind of Christ, like that level of compassion and empathy, which apparently is a sin nowadays, but that level of empathy and compassion that Christ had, like, think about what these young girls have just witnessed. Apparently, they were successful in this war, the Israelites. They killed all the guys. So we're talking about little girls who just watched their fathers, uncles, brothers,
Mothers.
and then mothers and possibly baby brothers be slaughtered, be murdered with the sword. And they have, just think about that for a second. Try to put yourself in the shoes of one of these young girls. You have no idea what's coming for you, what's going to happen to you now. Or maybe you do, and that's worse. you know, and just think about that level of suffering and that trauma and that pain that they're experiencing in that moment. For what? For the sins of their for the sins of their mothers, maybe, or the women and Balaam and these other women of from the tribe. Like, it's of no fault of their own, for sure. These young girls that they are in the position that they're in, but they are the captives that are purified with water, just like the men who went. And so my first thought was baptism. Was Jesus was baptized in the Jordan, right? And the way I understand Jesus' baptism is that it's not for him. It's he makes the water holy. And he makes the water, he takes upon himself. I believe that Jesus took upon himself all the blood of their enemies. These men who are covered in the blood of their enemies. They go and they wash themselves in their garments in the Jordan. This is kind of how I'm envisioning it. And these young girls go and wash themselves in this water, and all of that pain, all that trauma, all that suffering, and all the blood of these enemies that the Israelites, according to Jesus, should have been loving. they Jesus takes all of that upon himself whenever he goes down into those waters. That was my first thought from that little section there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's to go complement what you're saying there. One of the things that I've tried to do in reading some of these Old Testament passages, I shouldn't say verses, but passages, is kind of what you just said, that who is Jesus? He's always with the suffering or the downtrodden or the outcast. So, like, when we're reading these stories, they're written from the perspective of God's being with the victors, with the powerful, with the mighty warriors, with those who are doing the killing. But that's not what we see in Jesus. He's
Right.
always with the downtrodden.
Yeah.
So it's hard to it really is it's a hard, and this is, I guess, why to me sometimes it does feel like I'm just trying to explain away and turn into knots, because even if it says, the text may very well say God said to do all this murdering and killing, but God is on the side of the downtrodden always. That means the victors, those doing the slaying here, aren't the good guys. He's with those being murdered, not with those doing the murdering.
Right.
So that's something I'm trying to work on. It's harder said than done, because I was raised and I've spent the majority of my adult life reading these things as in a literal lens, and so it's extremely hard. to be back to that word paradigm. It's extremely hard to reassess that. It's to break out of that paradigm, you know.
Right.
But that's something that I'm trying to work on. And it still is hard. It still feels kind of weird to me. I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest, but I don't know. I don't know have any better way of reading it. If this is literal, if this literally happened exactly as it said here, and it was all God's will for this to happen, I'm not worshiping that God ever. Like, and I know that that's stronger language than a lot of people would be willing to use, but that to me, there's no bigger evil than that. Like, I don't know how you can read this and say, oh yeah, that's justified or that's good. That's a God worth serving. No, it's not. The only God worth serving is the one that you were just talking about, the one that's with those the suffering, not the ones committing genocide, not the ones murdering.
Right.
If that's who God is, to me, he's not worth serving. So
Yeah.
I've got to do something else with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Right. And one thing you could do, and this is the thing, like there's so many different routes you could take, different interpretive moves you could make. Like, because let's say that we did read it as if God is actually commanding these things, but then we read it from a spiritual warfare lens rather than a physical actual war.
right.
Well, then, yes, of course, God is the one who refuses to let idol worship stand. Like, he will not accept that. Like, anything that stands between it, like, I think the way I put it in my notes from, I don't know how long ago that was, whenever we did our read through of the Bible, I still had notes from this. But the way I put it is that Israel had played the harlot, right? You kind of using Hosea language
Yeah.
there. Like, they had left, like, given their hearts over to, for one, the lust, I guess, but also to worship of other gods, and like, and all of that, like, not kind of like that, you know, we sing that song, like, he won't relent until he has it all. Like, God will be all in all. That's what the scripture, that's the promise that 1 Corinthians 15 gives us, is that God will be all in all. And so, yeah, he will not relent. And I think actually in the NASB, there um, in this story, it says, "Do not relent." Like, talking about, like, attack when you attack them.
Yeah.
To be relentless.
Right.
And so, like, yeah, God's love is relentless and
Right.
and reckless, and he will tear down every lie, and he will, you know, shine light in all of the darkness, and he refuses to leave you in your crap.
Right.
So, like, in that sense, yes, like, God is out to utterly destroy anything that's utterly destroying you.
And that's how I read this story this morning. Like, that's where I get something beneficial out of it. To me, it loses all value if you try to read it literally. To me, it's a story. I mean, I know it's a big surprise, right? Most of the Bible to me is a story, but it's a mythological story, which means it has a truth to it, but it's not a literal truth. Like, to me, at least, to me, it's a story that's meant to tell a deeper truth, which is what you were just outlining. Like, you, spiritually speaking, not physically murdering people,
Right.
but your whatever it is, to me, that the Midian women in the story represent, as a symbol, represent whatever it is in your life that you're playing the harlot to use your language and Hosea's language. Like,
Yeah.
whatever it is in your life, whether it's your own ego or money or lust or greed or any of those
Works of the flesh.
those works of the flesh that you have sold your soul to, essentially, like, you have to destroy those utterly.
Right.
And I think that that's the significance of it, just being not just the women but even the children, like, even the seeds of those things before they have developed into something that actually is causing pain and destruction.
Right.
But because it's easy to see, within our life, we read it last night because in our Bible study we're reading First John, and it talks about whoever has anger against their brother is a murderer. You know what I mean? And, like, in that sense, it's that murder would be like the adult, but that anger is that child version of murder. Like it you
Yeah.
don't get murder without anger. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Like it grows into it. And so um
Yeah.
from that like reading it through an allegory lens like that, it makes sense to like I think that there's a lot of good stuff in here like that. Um it loses all of that if you try to make it literal, to me at least. But
Yeah.
I thought it was like I actually almost started laughing, even as horrific as the story is, because we read how they have killed so many people, but what they're concerned with is their religion, their religious rules. Purify yourself for 7 days. Follow all these rituals, and I just thought like to me, there's no better like example of the absurdity of religion than like kill all these people, shed all this blood, but make sure you follow those purity laws. Make sure you follow the rules and the regulations. Like I
Yeah.
just, it to me it's a perfect example of the very thing that got Jesus killed. Like he was challenging that the very thing. He was accused of ignoring the Sabbath.
Yeah.
But in response to like feeding people
Right.
or allowing people to pick grains on the Sabbath so that they didn't starve, like
Yeah.
or healing a man on the Sabbath.
Right.
You know, like it's the absurdity of like putting your religion, your rituals, I would say, above people, above human life. Like just the absurdity of that. To me, this right here is a direct. Jesus is the opposite of that in that regard. Like the story of Jesus to me there is a critique of this very idea of like it's okay to shed all this blood as long as you purify yourself and then you'll be okay. Like
Right.
no,
Yeah.
like it's not about those. It's not about following the laws. It's about loving your neighbor, man. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to go back to what you were saying earlier about the seed.
oh yeah,
Um, what that made me think of is like how like evil is a negation. In my view, evil is a negation. Evil has no substance or life of its own. You give your life to it. So like you were talking about the seed, and you were talking about like the allowing the child to grow up, right? Like if stopping something in seed form in a thought before it becomes an action, right? Like um the more you give life to that seed, the more it grows, and the more, in a sense, the more you give your life to that seed, the more you cease to have your life. You're giving your life over to this thing, in a sense. And like that reminded me of Maximus and via Jordan Wood and the idea of a false incarnation, how you can a false incarnation meaning you can give your life to something and that's false, a false version of yourself, a false incarnation through and I think it starts with that thing. It starts with like a seed and then you continually give your life to that seed so it continues to grow until it chokes out the life you were intended to have, the
right.
life that God intended for you, kind of like the wheat and the
That's
tares.
exactly where I was going to go with that.
Yeah,
Because that it is almost like a weed, right? Like the weed, if you don't pluck the weed before it matures, right, until it
yeah,
takes root, it will choke out the crop, right? That's why
yeah,
if you grow a garden, you have to go through like every few days and get out the weeds so it doesn't choke out your fruit bearing plants. I mean, because it will take
right,
over the field.
yeah,
It will take over and choke out whatever's producing good fruit.
yeah. Which is interesting. I actually listened to a thing today on. I started listening to a series of the podcast is called Impact Nations, and
Mhm.
they did a series of Jesus's parables, and I listened to them talking about the wheat and the tares today, and they were talking. I think darnel or darnel is the name of the weed that Jesus probably would have been talking about that was growing with the wheat. and it's visually from the exterior, right? It looks almost indistinguishable from the wheat, but it intertwines itself so much with it that you almost can't kill it without killing the wheat. And so there has to be a separation
Mm-hmm.
at some point, but it has to be done meticulously. It has to be, and it takes some finesse. I almost think of the imagery of like a surgeon with a scalpel, like how it's it takes a little bit of finesse, I would assume, to make sure that you're cutting what needs to be cut and not what doesn't. You know,
I have to assume. I don't know that.
right? And so that's why and I don't know if it's 100% applicable to what we're talking about here, but like I just thought that just reminded me of that because I was thinking about I listened to that today about the wheat and the tares, and there is going to be a separation. Whatever is false, whatever the false incarnations we've created, whatever things we've given our life over to rather than the life God has given us, those things will be separated and burned like chaff.
Well, I mean, that really, the whole wheat analogy or weed analogy is really what I had in mind when I said that about the seed. Really, I mean, because it is I don't like to I don't like to overgeneralize and make sweeping overgeneralizations, but I think that most things that we would classify as destructive in our lives don't uh they do grow out of nothing more than a seed, I guess you could say, you know? I mean, like most people, again, I don't want to make a general assumption, but I don't think most people just go on a whim go out and have an affair on their spouse.
Right.
That starts with a seed, you know, and depending on how much attention that seed is given,
Yeah.
it can bloom into a full-blown affair. You know what I mean? Like,
You don't just wake up one day and decide, you know what, I'm going to murder someone today, I think.
right. Again, I don't want to be, there are psychopaths, so maybe
mean,
people
yeah,
do
I
that. That's
guess.
why I don't like to make a super generalization, but I think in most scenarios, yeah, you're right. Like, it doesn't.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, I picked this up when I was reading it. It's a little, and I wondered if you got it too.
Okay.
But it is, now that I've critiqued the religious rituals, I wondered
Right.
if you picked up something in the rituals.
Yes,
Okay,
I
yeah.
did. Maybe the same thing.
Well, to me, maybe it was because we already talked about universalism, but it sounds to me,
Yeah.
like you're either going to be purified through water or through fire, but one way or another, the purification is happening.
Or both. Doesn't it say that even the things that go through fire have to then be purified with water? Say that?
Yes, it does. Yep. Shall purified with through fire, and it shall be clean. Nevertheless, it shall also be purified with water for purification, and whatever cannot withstand fire shall just go through the water. So,
Right.
to me, there was and maybe this isn't quite right, but it was just my initial thought. Obviously, it just hit me when we were reading it. This isn't even something I got from it when I read it this morning, but the water to me, the whole idea of whatever can't pass through the fire, passes through the water. Well, to me, it's like it's probably just because of the imagery of hell, right? Which is associated with fire. But like,
Yeah.
you can't pass through that purification without ceasing to exist. Like, you know what I mean? So like the transformation that we the purification, the sanctification, all that we go through here and now before we die, like to me relates to water. But to your point, of the Alex O'Connor thing earlier, like, why do we just assume that God's grace ends at your death? I mean, even if you pass through the fire, it's a refiner's fire. Like, it's
Yes.
the purpose of why would a good God just put someone in fire just to torture them? Like, there's got to be, it's got to be a restoration, right? Like, I mean, in fact, like, if you hold that Jesus is the full revelation of God, what we see in Jesus with the name Yeshua, that's transliterated as Jesus, it means Jehovah saves.
Yeah.
Like, this is literally his name. Like, why else would you think it?
Right. Yeah.
Why would you think it ends any other way? I don't know. That's like, if that's what God's nature is, that God's nature is to save, then what makes us think it would be any other way? And to me, this parallels that.
Yeah. Yeah, so it made me think of Revelation and how it says that
Revelations.
and the gates are always open, right? The gates of the city are always open,
Her gates shall never be shut.
shall never be shut. And it's, where is it at? Revelation 22, it's 22:15 or 14. Let me pull that up real quick. 22. Yeah. So let me back up to voice 13. Revelation 22:13. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Blessed are those. So, okay. Okay. First of all, let's not just skip past that.
Read it again.
I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. How is anyone's end not the end? In other words, how can anyone not come from Christ if all things were made through him, if all things are from him, for him, and to him, from him, for him, and to him, and he is the beginning and the end, how does that not mean that everyone ends up in him?
Right.
Or he ends up in everyone, or already is. But so verse 14, blessed are those who wash their robes, or their garments, you might say in this case. Blessed are those who wash their robes so that they will have the right to the tree of life and may enter the city by the gates. Outside are the dogs, the sorcerers, the fornicators, the murderers, idolaters, and everyone who loves and practices falsehood. Um, so it says, blessed are those who wash their robes so that they will have the right to the tree of life and may enter the city by the gates. Well, who needs to enter if not the ones that in the very next verse outside are the dogs, the sorcerers, all these folks that need to wash their robes.
That perhaps maybe relating it back to Numbers 31 need to pass through the fire and then the water, since the things that pass through the fire also pass through the water in Numbers.
Right.
Perhaps.
Yeah. And that's where my mind with it. My mind also went to Leviticus whenever they're laying out the sacrifices and how there are certain things were burned outside the camp.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There was purification by fire outside the camp. Um, Sorry, I need to send a text really quick.
This is almost unacceptable. Yeah. I don't like I said, I didn't even think about that. I think the shock of the things that immediately precede the talk of purifying their weapons and whatever else just causes, and it probably actually, if we're being honest, that probably happens a lot. The shock and awe of what precedes that causes you to sort of read over that. That's more of those silly old purification rituals, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But you probably shouldn't just be reading over stuff. Seems important.
Right. Well, also, so all of those scriptures I thought were interesting, like all those parallels. And of course, I went to ChatGPT and I was asking it about the parallels that I was seeing, and it went into even more detail and made even connections that I hadn't seen myself, even.
Yeah.
And all of that was really good. I don't have to, well, I don't know if we have time to read all of that or not, or if we care about reading. I don't necessarily want to just read everything ChatGPT
Right.
spit out today, but it's of course it also brought up 1 Corinthians 3. The other works will be tested by fire, will
Right.
be saved by fire. You'll be saved as one saved through fire. And so the gates are never shut, and all of that I thought about whenever I was reading through this. And because it says, let me go back to it, Numbers.
Numeros?
Numbers
El Numeros?
the A1. Um, where was we at? Yeah. You must wash your clothes on the seventh day. You must wash your clothes again, your robes, right? You must wash your clothes on the seventh day. On the seventh day, what's a seven represent? Perfection,
Completion.
completion. So you wash your clothes on the perfect day, the completion of all days, you might say, and you shall be clean. Afterward, you may come into the camp. So you can, after you wash, you can enter into the camp, into the city. And so, there's just those obvious correlations there between, and in Revelation, the nations that stand against the Lamb, that fight against the Lamb in this war, right? Because there's tons of parallels actually, because there's a war in Revelation as well, right?
Right.
And it's the kings, right?
Kind of a big one. Yeah.
Yeah, because it specifically says that it killed all the kings were killed. Remember Reba was one of them.
I do remember Reba. How could I forget? Here's your one chance, Fancy. Don't let me down.
So all the kings were killed, and um, you had multiple tribes or nations, you might say, involved in all of this because you had the Moabites and the Midianites kind of colluding together with Balaam, and so you have in Revelation you have the kings and the nations, and all throughout the book of Revelation the kings and the nations are those that are standing against the Lamb, and going to war against the Lamb. But then we see the kings of the earth entering the city and bringing their glory into the New Jerusalem.
Right.
Well, unless these are a different set of kings, then maybe you get that second chance that Alex O'Connor was trying to hint at.
Right.
you know, like, and of course Jesus, again, Jesus is the one who is crucified outside the city. He's the one that goes out to those on the outside and suffers with them. So long as anyone's suffering, Christ suffers with them. And this, I guess my biggest takeaway from all of this is like there's those obvious correlations with the fire and the water and baptism, of course, and the need for purification and the need to wash and be purified and wash your robes in the blood of the Lamb, and to wash your robes in the waters of life, and in Jesus blood and water pour from his side as he is suffering with those who suffer outside the city. And to me there's so many connections between all of that it's hard for me to imagine that it's not that we weren't supposed to read it this way.
Yeah, I don't disagree necessarily. I mean,
Yeah.
I think again, for me, the big takeaway, the big emphasis is that it's a story meant to be read as a story. If we try
Right.
to literalize it, and maybe a story is based in some history, we don't know. Maybe
Right.
could be. But the point being is that it's a story and it's told for a reason. To me, it's not the reason for telling it isn't for you to take away, like, fact check it as a historical document. Like, I don't.
Right.
It's to me a huge indication of that. I kind of hinted at the very very beginning of the chapter when there's 12,000 people. You're talking about these small nation of people, relatively small nation of people at the time. They're sending 12,000 men out to, like, that seems a bit like an exaggeration. I don't know that it was. Don't know that.
Yeah.
But
I pretty well assume anytime there's numbers involved, there's some sort of symbolic meaning.
right, yeah,
Because there's 1,000 from each of the 12 tribes, right?
exactly. So I think if we're insistent on trying to read this as a history retelling, it just loses all the good stuff that we just talked about. Like,
Yeah.
I don't there's all kinds of good stories that we accept as nothing more than stories of murder and war, and you can take all kinds of good stuff out of, but none of those, you can't get any, you can't glean any of the good if you're insistent that that the violence of the story is the literal part of that we're supposed to take out of it. Like, to me, that's my big takeaway. If that's the way that you're trying to tell me that we have to read these scriptures, then they're not, for me, they're not worth anything. Like, that's not where there's any value at all,
Yeah.
personally. But I think, as I hope that we've demonstrated, I feel like at least it's been good for me that, like, there's a lot of good stuff in here. If you can again, the word of my week or month is paradigm. If you can shift that paradigm out of this
Mhm.
hyper literalistic mind frame, there can be good symbol in there. Symbol is so powerful, man. Like, I think that's another sort of theme that I've been on lately. Of course, you know that, with the Paul Tillich stuff, but
Mhm.
to Tillich, a symbol isn't just a mere sign of something. It has a deep meaning. The symbol is powerful, and I agree with that. I think I don't even really fully understand what he means by it, but what little bit I grasp of it,
Yeah.
I agree. Like, to say something is a symbol doesn't delegitimize it. It doesn't make it any less effective. Um, it's just a way of helping our finite minds comprehend something that's probably way too much for us to even comprehend, really.
Yeah.
So, to me, that's my big takeaway from the kind of the overarching theme of it, though, and it's something I'm still working at. Like I said, uh, I've spent the majority of my life being told I had to read everything in here as if it was a literal historical retelling. So it's extremely hard to view it any other way.
Right. Yeah.
To me, it's even harder to do when we're talking about passages like this, because then it really feels like you're just trying to explain stuff away. Like,
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I suppose you could, if you wanted to view it more through a skeptical lens, you might just say that, like, well, the things that are written in Hebrews about him going to him outside the city, and the stuff in Revelation, and even the stuff in the Gospels about Jesus, like, you could just say that, like, a lot of that is just looking back on the Old Testament scriptures, and that's why there's these connections. And I don't have to deny that,
right.
to also think that, like, maybe we were really always supposed to read it this way,
Right.
you know? But yeah,
Yeah, depending on how you use that stuff, I don't have a problem. I don't see it any other way either, really.
yeah. But yeah, this is not something that we've done a ton, so I always feel like whenever we do these, they're a little unorganized, and I don't really, I didn't really have like my notes laid out super cleanly, to go through it all. So maybe this was kind of all over the place for folks, but I don't know if anyone's gonna enjoy it or not. But
I didn't think it was all over the place. I felt like it was pretty solid. We read through it and then kind of did commentary through it. I mean, to me, there is I guess in doing shows like this, there is a balance between, because I really like to just do stuff on the fly. Like, I appreciate being prepared. I do, like, I did read it ahead of time, but I don't want to just do a bunch of research and then chat GBT and then commentaries and then, like you were saying a while ago about just reading what chat. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, I want to do it live. Like, what is it speaking to me in this moment that people are
right,
getting? You know what I mean? And,
yeah,
like, just like with the purification and the universalism ties and the ties of all of that was, I read all through all this stuff this morning, and that didn't pop into my head. That was on the spur of the moment kind of thing. You know what I mean? And, like,
right,
I like that, for it to be organic. But I mean, there does need to be a little bit of, it can't just be super chaotic either. There has to be
yeah.
some balance.
No, yeah, and I'm sure that it was. I mean, I enjoyed it. I enjoy doing this sort of thing. I enjoy going through the scriptures and seeing what is speaking to you at the moment. Because, there was things that I got through the conversation that I hadn't necessarily seen in that light before, like all the stuff about the seed and where that took my mind with like Maximus and like false incarnations
Yeah.
and all of that stuff. Like that was all pretty good stuff.
Well, and that's the cool thing about doing these things together is because, like, on my own, what I got when we read through it was the universalism and the ties to, the fire and the water purification. But my mind didn't go to Revelation. But I mean, that was a really good connection. I forget about Revelation. So
Yeah.
that was a good tie. It was able to take something that I had, something that was given to me, I guess. I don't know how you want to phrase it, but and then you built upon that to take it to another level. You know what I mean? So that's
Yeah.
the cool thing about having somebody. That's why community is important.
Yeah.
I think.
Right. Yeah, I think that those studying the scriptures in community is really vital, actually. I think it's important. It can be frustrating sometimes, but it's good for us. I
Eh,
think it's good for us to have that
The
frustration.
funny thing that you say that it can be frustrating, it actually reminded me of a quote of Ramdas. Funny enough, he always used to say uh, something to the effect of, I always hate giving quotes because I know I'll never quote it exactly like he said it, but something to the effect of, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a weekend with your family.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it can be frustrating, but like, go spend a weekend with your family. You'll be frustrated at some point. Like,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the people closest to you are the ones that can get under your skin the easiest.
yeah.
I assume that's kind of what he's getting at there. Um, well, there was something else I thought about reading. Um, is there anything else we want to talk about? Did you have anything else on the Numbers 31 you wanted to say?
Not really.
Um,
Pretty satisfied with it. We didn't do the whole chapter. We only did about half of it, but I'm pretty satisfied. I think it gives you the idea of, like, I don't think we need to walk through all of it necessarily right now. Like, that gives you an idea of the approach that we're taking,
yeah,
which is a similar thing to how I would have said, going back to what you prefaced it all with, right? The Numbers 25 thing. Like, yeah, I think if you try to read that literally, like, God told Moses to impale these people. I think that you're gonna, if you want to read that literally, you're gonna have a hard time reconciling that with some of the things Jesus said. But
yeah,
if you understand it to be like a allegory, a story meant to tell you something deeper, a symbol, then yeah, there's good stuff in there. But
yeah. Which one are you going to allegorize, Jesus
yeah,
or this story?
exactly. One of them, you can't take them both literally.
Yeah, you're going to allegorize one or the other. So ChatGPT just knows me really well.
Yeah.
And knows that I'm always going to want some sort of poetic summary to whatever I'm looking at. And I thought this was pretty good, and I thought I would share it. Uh, but I wanted to do it last. Is there anything else we want to say?
I'm good.
I thought about talking about the sacrament stuff a little bit that I sent to you, but I don't know. We might can save that for another episode.
It's up to you, man.
How long we been going? Well, we've been going for a little bit. I'll just read this and we can shut her down for tonight. Call it good.
But I'm not gonna. To be fair, I'm not very much help in the sacrament stuff. So
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know a ton about it either, but I'm very interested in it.
yeah,
And all of that came about through like actually trying to understand my own tradition better, like Pentecostalism, which is interesting because you don't think of sacraments when you think of Pentecostalism, but that's the problem. I think by the time I received this tradition of Pentecostalism wasn't the same as it was in the beginnings of it. It comes out of the Wesleyan holiness movement, and Wesley, that he was a big believer in the sacraments, and like he studied the church fathers, and the early Pentecostals, they were sacramental, and held the Eucharist in super high regard and took it all the time.
Yeah.
And by the time I received it, we did we called it communion, and we did it once a year at the watch night service. It was once December 31st, we would go to the church and we get there like whatever 6, 7, 8 o'clock sometimes. It used to be earlier, and I think we've started pushing it back later over the years. But we used to get there earlier, and we would stay until midnight. And during the service, we would do foot washing and we would take communion, and that was like the only time in the whole year that we did it.
Right. I've actually always made a distinction between the Eucharist and communion, even though they're technically the same act, but I feel like I've always kind of viewed them as different things because to me, the Eucharist is centered around the sacrament itself, whereas communion is the basis of the communion to me seems to be the community. It's taking it together. You know what I mean? They're two separate emphasis. And I don't know that that's right. That's coming from somebody who's not steeped in tradition. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
Yeah. I'm still learning all of this stuff too, but it is something that I think is worth learning. Like, even for the sake of just understanding my own tradition better.
one thing that I thought was pretty cool about it, I guess, is that, this is all coming, I was not prepared for this at all, so it's all coming fresh off the dome, but I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, in the story of Melchizedek, didn't he offer bread and wine?
Mhm.
And so the whole Melchizedek thing is kind of a weird character in Scripture because it just seems to be out of nowhere and there's no explanation. And
Yeah.
who is this guy and what does he stand for? And
Right.
and then he just disappears as quickly as he's there. He's gone, right?
Yeah.
But he only offers the bread and the wine, which is interesting because then that's what Jesus offers.
Right.
Whereas the priests, like in the line of Aaron, are offering
Mhm.
blood sacrifice.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it's so ironic that we tend to view Jesus through the lens of blood sacrifice.
Right. But that's exactly what Hebrew says. He is from the order of Melchizedek,
Right.
not the order of Aaron. So he's a priest in the order of Melchizedek.
Right. So it gives that layer of like, but without that, there's this character Melchizedek. He's just he's there and gone.
Right. Yeah. I
Never
love that
mentioned
about it.
again.
Yeah, I actually love that about the story though. That he's just kind of like randomly shows up, and he has one of the church fathers makes something of the fact that like he's of that he just kind of shows up, and like essentially that like he's eternal, which I mean if you view him as the Christ, then of course he is, but as a type of Christ, but yeah, that Melchizedek himself isn't like born or begotten. He just kind of shows up. But
But I just think it's really cool. To me, that gives the symbol of the the sacrament itself a deeper meaning to me that it wouldn't have otherwise, simply because I can recognize the contrast between the that offering and the offerings of the lineage of Aaron, right? Like recognizing that how it flips things upside down.
yeah,
That whole Hebrews thing is just. I sent it to you the other day, and the only way I could describe it was topsy turvy, and that's no description at all. But I don't know any better way to say it.
right. I know what you mean though. Yeah, it is interesting. There's so many things that you have to. I'm convinced that. Well, I think that really all of Scripture is this way, but in particular, I think the Book of Hebrews is one that you have to read slow and really pay attention to what's being said, but you also can't like stop because like it all builds upon it. Like
Right.
in particular, chapters like 9, 10, 11, like you can't stop at 9. You'll never understand what nine's actually saying if you don't read 10.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
Well, even when I was just trying to send you a little clip of like where my mind was at with it, I was like, oh, I ended up sending you another verse right after. I was like, oh, should have kept going. Oh, should have went another one because like you just can't.
yeah.
It builds one, like you said, it builds one upon another.
Yeah.
But it's just the whole idea of that I got from it with the you never desired sacrifice, so you gave me a body to offer a sacrifice to end sacrifice.
Right.
That's why I call it topsy turvy, because it's almost like I envision like you start back here and it's like a tunnel, but it goes this way, like up and down, like a cyclone sort of. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's what I mean by topsy turvy. It's like you don't desire sacrifice, but so we need to end sacrifice, but to end sacrifice. I have to give myself a sacrifice. It's so, which all ties back into the offering of the blood and the bread and wine instead of the
Yeah.
blood sacrifices. So, anyway,
Yeah, those symbols of like, I mean, what you could just like, again, it's that what you might call water to wine reading, the allegorical, the spiritual reading, what I've heard some folks refer to as the water to wine. Like on the water level, the sacrifices are about the body of this animal and the blood, and it's like a real like it's kind of an ugly thing, you know? Um, but the water to wine, the is that what that becomes then is the body and blood of Jesus. It's his very life given to us as we partake in it, as we come to the table and we take his body and it's his life being given to us through the body and his like however you want to think about that. I believe that the real presence of Jesus is in the bread and in the wine. Like that's part of how we whenever we talk about like we in our Pentecostal circles there's a lot of talk about the presence of being in his presence, right? And like of course we're always in his
right.
presence, right? Like he's
It's kind of a pet peeve of mine, actually.
he's always with us, you know, but he is if there's one place that we know for sure we're going to encounter him, it's at the table, you know. Like it's easy to lose track of the sense of like he's in you and you're in him, and you know sometimes you can it's I think that the bread and the wine are good for us because they are a constant reminder of his real presence. You can if you don't feel him right now, like you can rest assured that he's there.
You can fill up, fuel it up,
Right in this
take a handful of it.
in the bread and wine. But it's just it's interesting to think about like the sacrifices and think about like killing an animal and then that being transfigured into bread and wine of communion through Jesus. You know, that's just an interesting thing. I think
Yeah, we got way off base there.
a smidge bit, smidge bit. But yeah, I've been wanting to look into that kind of stuff a little bit more in my own tradition. I think that it's important to understand your own tradition, where you come from, who were the folks that shaped the folks that shaped you. Like more and more, I care a lot about that kind of stuff, about the tradition and stuff like that. And in a lot of ways, that's why, like, at the going kind of coming full circle here, the whole like what I said at the very beginning about progressive Christianity, like how I wouldn't consider myself a progressive Christian. It's because in a lot of ways, what I actually see myself doing, the more I come to learn about the tradition and about my own tradition, the more I feel like what I'm actually doing is just becoming more Pentecostal, not less, and becoming more traditional and not less, more Orthodox, not less, you know. But yeah,
Maybe
I mean
that's a path you're on, not me. So
yeah. I mean, it's hard. It's kind of hard to judge yourself in that way. It's hard to know. I think maybe some in some ways other folks can probably have a better read on you than you can of yourself sometimes. But
Right.
that's kind of how I imagine what I'm doing or attempting to do. But yeah,
I don't have anything else to add to that.
yeah. Well, I guess I'll read this little poetic summary of kind of the themes we talked about in Numbers 31, and then we'll close her down.
All right.
The fire burns not to destroy, but to refine what still bears the image. The camp is not closed, the gates remain open. Those outside are not castaways, but pilgrims yet to be washed. The blood on the sword becomes the blood on the cross, and the Lamb who was slain opens the scroll not to condemn, but to redeem. Even Midian, even Babylon, their judgment is a fire that could yet purify their gold. The leaves still grow for their healing. Because the leaves of the tree
I got you.
are for the healing of the
The
nations.
healing of the nations. Yeah, man.
And who are the nations that stand against God, if not the Midianites, if not Babylon, if not...
That's what the name Midian actually means. You know that? It's like if I remember correctly, it means conflict or strife.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know that. That's interesting, though. Yeah. That was a thing that as I was reading that, I remembered that I forgot to mention the tree whose leaves are there for the healing of the nations, the ones that were the bad guys the whole time. The Revelation. So you got the kings of the earth bringing in their glory into the New Jerusalem, and you got the tree whose leaves are there for the healing of the nations who were also standing against the Lamb the whole time. This fire is meant to purify. It's meant to refine. So submit to that fire now. Wash your robes. Come inside. That brings up some other stuff, but we'll save it.
Spoiler alert. No. That's a little teaser.
Yeah.
You're listening to Back Pew Convos.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Sal, and this is the podcast God wants you to listen to.
So if you want to remain in God's will, have a sit down
Grab a beverage of your choice.
and have a listen.
You're welcome.